I don't want to be Herbert Hoover.
Well, hello. Amidst all of this shit show that is the Elon Musk-Trump feud, which has Donald Trump threatening to pull funding from SpaceX and Steve Bannon saying that Elon Musk is going to be deported. On the flip side, you have Elon Musk saying that Trump is somewhere hidden in the Epstein files and then it's going to shock the world. And Epstein, and then Musk saying they might give money to Democrats. All that said, there's a story out today that reflects exactly where Americans are on Trump, and it's not good for Trump. And it doesn't reflect the last few days, which I guess we'll find out soon in the future about this. A Washington Post, New York Times poll has Trump suffering greatly, and the numbers are not good for him. They're down on almost across the board, and his favorability rating has dropped to the low 30s. So what does this mean? And especially since, if you pay attention, wasn't there a poll like 10 days ago that said Trump was doing great? Well, there was. And that's what I want to talk about first. Rasmussen is a company that does a lot of polling. And in all of their polls, Trump performs better than he does in anything from the Washington Post, New York Times, Quinnipiac, USA Today. And the reason is, it's simple, is because the Republican Party pays for these polls. And the questions are seated in such a way as to get a positive response. Polling is a science. It's generally, most polls come out right around the same. That's what tells you there's a scientific method to it, the way to ask questions, not to ask leading questions, and to have a sampling that's more indicative of the American population. And Trump's losing dramatically. Now, why? And well, first of all, who are these people? I think it's important to understand that he's doing poorly with Republicans as well. Now, is it MAGA Republicans or people that identify as Republicans? That's a little hard to tell, but it's bad news for him. And when you look at the first 100 days and you ask yourself this, I think it's this honeymoon thing that most people got off to, Trump didn't. And it started with DOGE. We'll get to that in a second, but let's look at the first 100 days.
Tonight here in Washington, we're on the verge of a critical juncture by which all modern presidents are judged, for better or for worse. While the first 100 days are but a snapshot in time, and things can certainly change and often do, as we've seen, we're now seeing what the American public has to say about how President Trump has done in his first 100 days in office. The current assessment is worse than anyone who has occupied the Oval Office in at least the last 7 decades. It was FDR, of course, that set 100 days as the standard for judging a president's performance. And President Trump now is setting his own standard for the lowest approval 100 days in since at least Eisenhower.
It's not surprising, actually, if you think about it, because what Trump did from day one was not just an attack on Democrats. It went right across the board. Let me hear a little more. This is from Rachel Maddow. In fairness, this is MSNBC, and she is no fan of Trump, but she does offer, I think, some valuable insights.
The 100 days, there's never been a president who has botched the first 100 days of his presidency more than Donald Trump has. And you don't have to take that as a subjective view. It's the view shown in scientific polling of the American public. The public is deeply, deeply, deeply against what Trump is doing. The Pew poll that came out this week, he's minus 19 points underwater in terms of his approval rating. If you ask the American people about what they feel about his handling of every single issue that you can poll on, he's underwater on every single one of them. And so he's been very radical in his first 100 days, and I think we knew that would be true, but I don't think we'd know that he would turn the American public, including a large portion of his own base, against him so quickly. The public would be willing again and again and again to go protest and say no and rise up against him, that he would fare so uniformly disastrously in court. He's just been clobbered in the court in dozens and dozens and dozens of cases already. So it's been a real, he's really flailed.
He has really flailed. But what are the issues? What is it that's bringing Trump down, and what can he do about it? Well, I can't answer the second part. I mean, what he could possibly do is open up the channels in which he gets advice and some sort of insight into what can move our economy forward. We know the list. We'll get to all that. I first want to start with DOGE and this anecdote from NBC. And I think this anecdote is also very indicative of what's happening with these cuts. Before I play this, I want to remind you that the dismantling of U.S. aid, and in the early days, the going after the federal government employees, these bureaucrats. I grew up in D.C. I know these people. My family all worked in the federal government, and my mom worked for the U.S. Department of Justice. And, my father was a Capitol Hill policeman. I saw what these people did, and they do good work. One of the pushbacks early on is you have 535 members of Congress. You have 100 in the Senate and 435 in the House. They all have backers, people that work for them, the entire federal government, and they get stuff done. I want to tell you real quick, if you get a chance, there's a book by Michael Lewis now, and I talk about him a lot. His book is called Who is Washington? And some amazing stories about the work of these bureaucrats. It's an invaluable read. Highly recommended. So listen to this story. This will tell you exactly what's going on with DOGE and why Trump totally foobarred these cuts early on, and especially allowing Elon Musk, now his dark enemy, to be in charge of this.
I think we're very close to that. I wonder whether the president really even knows, the extent of what has been done. Remember that night that he was taken by helicopter to Walter Reed? Mm-hmm. He was having difficulty breathing. He had COVID. He was very sick, right? He was given 2 monoclonal antibodies, right? He referenced those as miracles. They were cures. All of a sudden, he got better. I mean, he could have died, but for those drugs. Dr. Peter Stein's office made available those drugs to the president and to thousands of others. Peter Stein was fired, was let go. I don't think the president knows that. Someone needs to walk into the Oval Office and say, Mr. President, we just fired the person who may have saved your life.
Obviously, that's dramatic, but there's a lot of stories like that. I think the one that breaks my heart the most is, again, USAID, and to see these American farmers who voted for Trump thinking that he would deliver on these promises of making government more reachable and more understandable, which is a legitimate argument from either side. We can make government better. We can make it work better. But that doesn't mean you just go in and non-surgically just cut things. The FDA, their responsibility is to make sure the medicine and the food that we consume are safe. To cut them is, it's pretty obvious. There's an irony there. We want to save money. Oh, we want to save money and now we're dying? Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., and vaccines. Vaccines have 300 years of effectiveness. The mRNA vaccine saved millions of lives around the world. And it wasn't something we threw together at the last minute. The mRNA vaccine has been around for almost 30 years. Well, at least the research into it that allowed us to be able to get through the pandemic, although 1 million Americans still died. You start looking down this list, and I made this list. It blows me away to look at what he's done and what he's done to Americans. And overnight, to listen to him, to talk crazy about this, it just shows you. He started off this morning with this fresh complaint about his approval rating from the New York Times and the Washington Post. Let me read you what he said here, and you can see it right here from his Truth Social account. The failing New York Times and the Washington Post. He's a freaking child, right? Anyway. 2 papers that have ruthlessly fought me for years have done polls where a vast majority of those sampled are Democrats. There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. I've told you before, they'll show you how they did it. In other words, the polls, just like their writings, are rigged. It is not possible for a Republican to do well in such a poll. They are corrupt as hell. After a while, even MAGA people start hearing this and they start realizing that this guy's not well, that there's something wrong with him. I made a list and I started looking down as to why his poll numbers are so bad. And again, remember, the first 100 days are different than what this poll right now, I'm telling you, has nothing to do with Musk and Trump. And I don't know where that's going to go, but I don't think it's going to come back together. Do you agree with me? Do you think that's irreparable? The things they've said about each other? I do. I think both men have difficulties. I think Trump is obviously a malignant sociopath, and we've all seen, Elon Musk and his, his ketamine and the other drugs that he's been taking. He has obviously some spectrumy aspects to him. I still feel like that Elon Musk is in his heart a Democrat, and that this was all about trying to get Trump to fund SpaceX and to get the federal government involved in some of the things that have nothing to do with Tesla. But he got screwed on this big bill. I think one of the things he got screwed of is there were absolutely no pushback on oil and gas, but electric vehicles didn't get the break. And I think he took that personally. I think that was a big part of this. But anyway, let's look down here and let's look at immigration. All right. When Trump came in to office and started talking about getting rid of, 11 to 12 million people, there was a discussion. Listen to this is Kramer from CNBC.
Well, stop immigration and force migrants to leave in terms of wages.
Unless you're Hamilton, I'm kind of against it.
Isn't that going to be inflationary?
Of course. Of course.
Is it a one-time, though, and then
smooth
you sort of
haul?
even out?
I don't know. I mean, when you see tariffs like that, obviously you think about 1929.
So 1929, if you heard that at the very end, what they were talking about is tariffs and immigration together could lead to a stagflation, recession and inflation, and possibly even worse. So this is something that, when people are watching Fox News and Stephen Moore or these other conservatives come on and they start saying, and Ted Cruz, and they start talking about tariffs. They're not going to talk about immigration because what Fox News and what Trump does is they always put immigration up there with MS-13, which is all bullshit because MS-13 is less than 1% of the gangs in this country. And of course, it didn't even start in Mexico. It started in prisons here. Gang problems, it is a problem. But again, I say this and I'll keep saying it again, the number of crimes committed by Native Americans is much higher per capita than it is for undocumented people. And sanctuary cities are safer because people in there feel they can call the cops when they see a bad immigrant and not worry about getting deported. But this is a breaking news. And let me get this up for you, too. With all of Trump has been saying and sending people to these prisons in El Salvador without due process. Well, now Kimar Abrego Garcia is on his way back to the United States from El Salvador, and they will try to try him here. But at least here, he has the opportunity for a fair trial. In El Salvador, you saw Kristi Noem standing in front of those prisoners. It was horrible. So immigration and tariffs both have caused a certain uneasiness about whether or not Trump knows what he's doing. And one more thing about those tariffs, the timing of those tariffs was suspicious. It kind of almost like market manipulation. If you remember when he announced these tariffs, these huge tariffs, the market dove, and it's still down. It's still down 3,000 points from when Trump took office. But you had people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who sold stocks the day before the announcement and then bought them back right before Trump announced today's a good day to buy in the stock market. And they had a 2,000 point jump because Trump called for a 90-day pause. Now, most Americans maybe didn't pay attention to that story, but it's typical of the grift that goes through this particular president and his administration. I also think that when Americans look and they see Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook and Elon Musk at the inauguration, wasn't Facebook who Trump attacked time and time again about withholding, stories that he thought would be beneficial to him, but the truth were they were lies, like the rigged election and other things about Biden that we're continuing to hear about, which aren't true with the pen. By the way, the story about the auto pen, do you really think that Trump signed 1,500 of those pardons himself for the January 6th criminals? No, of course he didn't. But there are others too. I think when everybody saw Pete Hegseth, this guy that, let's be honest, he's the kind of guy nobody likes. He's never really been liked by anybody. When he was at Fox News, he was drunk a lot. People smelled alcohol. They didn't trust being around him. And because he said nice things about Trump on Fox News, he made him Secretary of Defense. And of course, Signalgate and the whole thing where his mother came out and said that, he's had a dangerous relationship with women. He had to settle a case where he held a woman in a hotel room against her will. So, I don't think it's one thing with this poll. I believe it's a lot of things that get Americans going, what? People that voted for this guy, do you think those farmers who are losing their farms because USAID was shut down and they no longer have anybody to sell their soybean to, they were selling them to developing nations. And we were helping developing nations, which is always a good thing. I mean, this used to be what we were about, using our strength and our power, not to try to intimidate people and put them down, but to do good. This Judeo-Christian behavior that I hear so much about. Yet I see very little evidence that exists in the Republican Party today. And of course, RFK and the measles outbreak and so much. But Kash Patel, if there was one person I thought that really personified how far off base Trump is putting this guy in charge of the FBI when he says things like this.
We're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice.
And of course, I mentioned RFK and the measles outbreak today. I mean, I don't know about you, but I worry. I mean, what will happen if I get measles? Even though I had MMR as a kid, do I need to get another shot? I asked my doctor, and she said no, but that was a month ago. And now, of course, the latest.
A new travel warning from the Centers for Disease Control as measles cases surge around the globe. The agency saying if you're traveling abroad, make sure you're vaccinated or consider postponing your trip.
The updated guidelines reflect that this is a global infection.
Cases popping up at airports, even on airplanes. Colorado health officials say 3 people with confirmed cases took a Turkish airline flight to Denver earlier this month. And there were other reported exposures at Newark, Chicago, and Seattle airports, raising alarms from health departments there.
This is the largest measles outbreak we've had since 2019.
Okay, so poll numbers are hard. They're hard to understand. I'm not going to pretend that I understand every aspect of it, but I do talk to people, and I've had friends that I had a falling out with over Trump in the last 7 or 8 years. And I don't do this thing where I see him now and I go, "You're wrong." See now, I don't want that. I want, like most of you, I want to be able to have conversations with people who aren't insane. And now, I can tell. I know these guys didn't vote for him in 2024, and they're worried. Like so many of us, we're worried about the future and where we're headed. So that was, again, when I talk about the people that I worry about the most, I think a big part of this is that Trump still has Fox News, which is dangerous. I don't know if I have this in front of me right now. I don't. But when recently, when they were talking again, another thing, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, when you hear Republicans talk about this and talk about, when you hear Elon Musk say Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and you want to go, fuck you, I put money in Social Security for 50 years. It's not a Ponzi scheme. This is my government, right? When you hear that. But also, I guess in a fair way to look at this is when you look at Medicaid, Medicaid probably doesn't affect that many people watching this. Medicare does. And when they're talking about cuts to Medicaid, let me tell you something. In this big, beautiful bill, there are cuts to Medicare as well. So where we are and where we stand moving forward, it's dangerous territory. It is dangerous. And this is a big reason why Trump's numbers are going down. What will bring them up? I don't know. I mean, he's been in office for more than 100 days, and he still hasn't solved the Ukraine-Russian crisis. And looking at NATO and looking at our friends, he's continuing to talk about tariffs. I guess to sum this all up, the real thing we're looking at right now is whether or not the future, post this Musk-Trump feud, can this get worse? Can these numbers, can this approval rating go down? And if it continues to go down, what will the Republican Party do? Because we know what Trump will do. He does what he always does. He's insane.
Love us. And then at some point they miss it so badly. And some of them embrace it and some of them actually become hostile. I don't know what it is. It's sort of Trump derangement syndrome, I guess.
It occurred to me that the real question shouldn't be, why are Trump's approval ratings so low? The real question should be, how does anyone approve of this at all?
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes!
TikTok!
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.